At my father's birthday, they sat me at a folding table outside with the kids. I said nothing. Then, as they lit the candles on his cake, my helicopter landed. Turns out I wasn't late. I was just arriving on a level they never reached. My name is Blair Remington. I'm 31 years old, and I live between Manhattan and Singapore. I built my first company at 24. Sold it at 28. But none of that mattered to my family. To them, I was always the difficult daughter. So when I got invited to my father's birthday and they sat me outside, like I was a guest, not blood, I didn't cry. I didn't confront. I just walked out calmly and let my helicopter do the talking. I arrived exactly at 6:45 p.m. Not early, not late, precisely on time, the way I show up for any deal that matters. The venue was our family's estate outside Greenwich, the kind of house where gates open slowly, champagne flows like water, and silence isn't golden. It's expected. A valet took my keys. He didn't recognize me. Are you with the vendors? I smiled. No. Family. He blinked, flustered, then pointed toward the back lawn. Everyone's out there. Table seating is alphabetical. I walked down the stone path. My heels clicked against polished slate. The garden was lit like a gala. Gold fairy lights, linen cover tables, strings of soft piano music playing under the hum of practiced laughter. And there they were. All of them. My father. My stepmother, Elise. My brother, Chase. Aunts, uncles, distant cousins, and corporate friends whose net worths were recited like status spells. No one looked up when I arrived. Not really. Elise did, briefly. She sipped her wine, tilted her head, and said, "Oh, you came." Not a greeting. A surprise. Like I was a celebrity crashing a private event. "Of course," I said. "It's Dad's birthday." She smiled tightly. "Yes. And we just weren't sure you'd show." Chase walked over next, already half drunk. Button down unbuttoned too far. Cufflinks dangling. "Look who decided to make an appearance," he said, clinking his glass against mine before I could raise it. Tech goddess back in the flesh. I hated when he used that tone, like my success was cosplay. "Hello to you too," I said. He looked around. "We didn't know where to seat you. Elise figured it might be easier if..." He paused. "You don't mind sitting outside, do you? The patio's gorgeous this time of night." "Outside?" I asked. He gestured to the far end of the lawn, where 2 extra tables had been set up, uncovered, facing away from the party. Plastic folding chairs, a single citronella candle, and 4 unfamiliar faces, children of second cousins and someone who looked like a friend of the florist. "We just weren't sure where you fit." I felt it then. Not anger, not sadness, just a pause. Like the air around me had gone perfectly still. "Of course," I said. "It's perfect." I walked across the lawn, careful not to let my heels sink into the grass. I passed 2 tables full of people who hadn't seen me in years, some who had never once called to check if I was alive. Someone whispered, "Didn't she move to Asia?" Another said, "She missed Elise's tea party last month." And then, "Still single, huh?" I reached the back table. They overflow. A girl with braces looked up and smiled nervously. I nodded politely, draped my coat over the back of the chair, and sat down. No one offered to move. No one asked if I wanted a drink. Not even a place card. I stared straight ahead, watched my father raise a toast. "To family," he said. I sipped water and said nothing. They thought they'd seated me at the edge of the event. But really, they gave me the best seat in the house. Because from here, I could see everything. The games, the sycophants, the empire they built on nameplates and nepotism. And I realized something. They still thought I was 17. Still thought I'd beg for a seat, ask for approval, work my way back into a family that never really made room for me. But tonight? Tonight was different. Because what they didn't know was that I hadn't arrived late. I was just waiting for my entrance. And it wasn't going to come from the driveway. They didn't start calling me difficult. Not right away. That came later, After I stopped smiling through discomfort. After I started asking questions no one wanted to answer. But before they labeled me the problem, I was just a little girl trying to be seen. My mother left when I was 8, not in a dramatic slam door kind of way. She left with a whisper. One morning, I woke up to a note on the piano bench. Her handwriting, graceful and slanted. I love you, Blair. Never stop asking why. That was it. No explanation. No goodbye hug. Just a perfume trail and an empty space at the breakfast table. My father told me she was unwell. Said it like it was fact. Said it again when I asked 2 weeks later. And again a year later, when I refused to call Elise Mom. You'll understand when you're older, he said. He was wrong. I understood far too soon. Elise moved in by the time I turned 10. She had perfect nails, a fake laugh, and a talent for disappearing emotionally while staying physically present. She loved Chase. Dotingly, blindly, loudly. Me? She tolerated. She corrected my posture, tone, friends, hobbies. Sweetheart, maybe focus on things that are more feminine? Your tone sounds argumentative. Why don't you take a breath before you respond? My father never stopped her. Not once. Chase and I were 4 years apart. He was golden from the start. Soccer captain. Soft curls. A voice that could say the dumbest things and still get applause. At 13, he crashed my bike and blamed the neighbor's kid. Dad laughed. He's just clever. At 15, I won a regional science fair. Built an AI prototype that beat out 2 private schools. Dad said, "That's cute. Are you still doing that robotic stuff?" The older I got, the more invisible I became. Unless I was in trouble. Then I was ungrateful, difficult, disrespectful. Once, I asked Dad why he never brought up Mom anymore. He snapped. Because she left. What else is there to say? I wanted to say, she left you. Not me. But I swallowed it. Like I always did. In high school, I started spending more time in libraries than in my bedroom. It was the only place no one interrupted me, where I wasn't being measured against Chase or scolded for taking up space. Books became my shelter. Code became my language. And silence became my armor. I got into MIT at 17. Early admission. Partial scholarship. Full ride came later, after I built a budgeting tool that went viral among college students. No one in my family came to the demo day. Chase had a regatta. Elise was hosting a charity brunch. Dad sent a text. Proud of you. Can't wait to see what you do next. But he never asked what I was doing now. I didn't come home that summer. Or the next. Every time I returned to the estate, I was a guest in my own history. Elise would reintroduce me to people like she was doing me a favor. This is Blair. She's our little tech genius. And then she'd whisper to her friends. She's very independent. Which was code for, we don't talk much. By the time I turned 23, I was done waiting. Done performing. Done trying to earn my spot at a table that was never built for me. So I walked away. I cashed in the startup equity I had saved. Lived off noodles and negotiation. Started my own fintech platform, solo. No investors. No backing. No last name leverage. I pitched 72 VCs before one finally said yes. I slept on my office floor. I showered at the gym. I didn't speak to my father for 2 years. And when the company hit $10 million in revenue, he didn't call. But when Chase launched a media brand and needed funding, Dad hosted a party. Wrote the first check. Elise posted about it for weeks. So proud of our future innovator. Chase's company folded in 8 months. Mine hit its Series B. Still, the family group chat said, Blair's doing fine, but she's always been hard to work with. So when the birthday invitation came this year, I almost deleted it. A digital invite. No call. No, we'd love to see you. Just a time, a date, and a dress code. Garden formal. Family dinner for Dad's 60th. I stared at the screen for 5 full minutes. Then I booked a helicopter. Not to show off, but because I knew what kind of seating I'd be offered. And this time, I was bringing my own damn landing pad. They thought I disappeared. In truth, I was building something so solid, so unfakeable, so undeniable, that when I returned, I wouldn't need an invitation. I'd own the building. I sat at the back table, sipping a glass of room temperature Pinot Grigio. The kids beside me whispered about TikToks and group chats. One of them scrolled through Instagram on full brightness. No one offered me a napkin. No one refilled my drink. Chase was inside, giving a toast. The lights inside the dining room flickered with chandeliers and camera flashes. And yet, I wasn't angry. I was anchored. Because while they served soufflés and applause, I was seated with my silence. And my silence was very well funded. I closed my eyes for a moment, and I saw the tiny co-working space I'd rented at 22, the one that had holes in the ceiling and smelled like burnt coffee. I had 2 pairs of shoes and a laptop that overheated if I opened 3 tabs. My staff was a Google Sheet. My meals were oatmeal, ramen, or whatever I could scrape together. But what I lacked in comfort, I made up for in clarity. The idea came to me during a fraud detection case study in grad school. People don't need better banks. They need better boundaries. I designed my first budgeting AI in 72 hours. Taught myself to code the parts one couldn't outsource. I pitched friends, then strangers, then strangers of strangers. Most laughed. A few politely declined. One told me, "We're not in the business of funding strong opinions," which was code for, "You're a woman who won't obey us." I didn't argue. I just kept building. By the time I was 26, I'd raised my first million. From a woman-led angel group who said, "You don't just have vision. You have evidence." They invested $250,000. I used $30,000 of it to pay my student loans. Then I hired 2 engineers. Then a CFO. We bootstrapped like maniacs. 12-hour days. 7-day weeks. No fancy offsites. No team-building retreats. Just code, clients, and commitment. When the press finally noticed us, they thought we were new. Breakout fintech star Blair Remington stuns Silicon Valley. But I wasn't new. I was just quiet. And now, I wasn't just on their radar. I was on every cap table. Back at the table, I checked my phone under the tablecloth. A Slack message from my assistant. 1 new wire confirmation. $7.2 million ARR fund allocation, white heavy checkmark. 7.2. Annual. From a brand that once called me too niche. I smiled. Not because of the money. Because I remembered when my stepmother said, "Sweetheart, some people just aren't built for business." Across the lawn, my father was laughing with his attorney. Probably talking trusts and properties and how proud he was of Chase for launching something again. He had no idea that last week I bought the patent his firm forgot to renew. That's right. My company now owned the core backend logic his new venture was using. I wasn't just attending the party. I was slowly becoming the landlord of everything they thought was theirs. But tonight wasn't about flexing. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about leaving a footprint so clean, so cool, so surgically timed, that they'd never recover from the silence. And as I felt the vibration in my phone at exactly 7:28 p.m., I looked down and saw the message that started the finale. Smaller plane, pilot Justin, 1 mile out. Touchdown in 3. I tucked the phone back in my coat, stood slowly, straightened the skirt they once mocked me for wearing in high school, now a $7,000 couture redesign, and walked quietly across the grass. One of the cousins looked up, confused. "Where's she going?" Someone else said, "Wait, is that a noise?" The sound started low. A hum. A chop. Then a deep, unmistakable rotor beat. The kind of sound that stops conversation. That makes heads turn. That makes forks freeze midair. Inside the dining room, the glass rattled. People stood. My stepmother gasped. And my father? He stepped out onto the terrace. Eyes wide. The helicopter descended, perfectly centered in the rear clearing. Its lights pulsing like a heartbeat. I didn't run. I didn't wave. I walked slowly, calmly, hair lifting in the wind, eyes straight ahead. And right before I stepped into the cabin, I turned, locked eyes with my father, smiled, and watched him realize that the little girl he once ignored now arrived by air. There's a special kind of silence that follows the sound of a helicopter. It's not just the absence of noise. It's the absence of denial. When I stepped into that cabin, I wasn't just leaving a party. I was leaving their version of me behind. The one they sat outside, underestimated, mispronounced, and forgot. And I wasn't coming back to correct them. Because people like that, they don't need correction. They need witnessing. The pilot's name was Justin, ex-Navy, now working private gigs for people who usually wore gold watches and wanted to beat LA traffic. But me? I wasn't here to beat traffic. I was here to remind the sky that I belonged in it. He smiled as I climbed in, calm as ever. All clear. Weather's with us. Perfect, I said, fastening my belt. Take your time. He lifted us slowly. I didn't look down right away. Not yet. Let them feel the hum. Let them chase the shadow. Let them realize they missed the moment again. From above, the party looked like an event. But not like my event. It looked small, uneven. A collection of shiny cutlery and crumbling relationships under string lights. My brother was on the lawn now, squinting up at the sky. My stepmother had one hand over her chest. My father just stood still, as if the sound itself froze him. Only then did I turn, looked down, and waved. Not a big wave. Just 2 fingers. Enough to say, I see you, but I don't need you. Inside the helicopter, I pulled out my phone. Dozens of messages had already started pouring in. Group text, family chat. Uncle Ray, was that you? Cousin Janelle, you really came in a helicopter? Step-Aunt Maureen, are you okay? I left them unread. Then came the private ones. Elise, stepmother. I don't know what that was, but it was completely unnecessary. You embarrassed your father. Chase, brother. Very on brand. Dad. Call me. We need to talk. That one made me pause. Because for years, we need to talk had meant sit, listen, shrink, apologize. But now, it meant nothing. I texted back one word, why? And then muted the thread. The view changed as we crossed over the Hudson. City lights blinked like a signal tower in Morse code. Skyscrapers in the distance. Power. Movement. Noise. My world. Justin turned and asked, want to make a landing at West 30th or head to the private pad? Private, I said. Tonight's not for anyone else. He nodded. You're the boss. 10 minutes later, we touched down on a rooftop helipad overlooking the river. Wind all around. No cameras. No reporters. Just quiet ownership. I stepped out, heels steady on the steel. Phone buzzing in my coat pocket. I didn't check it. Instead, I just stood there, arms crossed, breathing in the cold air, and felt something I hadn't felt since I was 17. Completion. That night, I stayed in a hotel. Penthouse. Minimalist. All windows. I poured a glass of champagne. Not to celebrate. To mark the moment. Because that's what people like us learn to do. We don't wait for someone to toast us. We toast ourselves. At midnight, I finally opened the messages. There were 76. Elise again. Blair, I hope you realize how childish that was. Chase. Classic. Always about the spotlight. Dad again. Seriously. Call me. But the one that stopped me? Mom. Out of nowhere. First message in a decade. I saw the clip. Someone posted it. You looked so calm. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. I stared at the screen. Heart still. Breath slow. Then typed. I am. And I finally believed that. The next morning, headlines rolled in. A tech blog had caught the moment from a distant drone. Billionaire founder makes helicopter exit from Greenwich Gala. Was that Blair Remington? I didn't respond. But I forwarded it to my lawyer. Because, yes, the patent Chase used, I now owned it. And we were sending him an invoice by Monday. Later that day, I finally opened the one message I'd ignored on purpose.
Dad.
I don't know when things got so cold between us, but I've always been proud.
Even if I didn't say it.
I reread it 3 times, then deleted it. Because love without protection isn't love.
It's a speech.
And I don't attend speeches anymore. I own the stage. There's a certain panic that only shows up in people after you've stopped chasing them. It lives in their voice, in their half-typed texts, in the questions that sound like apologies but come too late to matter. That's what the days after the party felt like. Not triumph, not revenge, just echoes. I stayed in the penthouse for 2 nights after the helicopter. Not because I needed to, because I wanted the silence of my own space. My own money, my own timeline, no expectations, no performance, no one asking me to apologize for making other people feel small by simply refusing to shrink. On the morning after, I woke up to 46 missed notifications. Some were texts, some were DMs, a few were media pings. But what stood out? The voicemails. Elise's first. Blair, I really think we should talk. That entrance that upset your father. He felt ambushed. Ambushed? Like I was a hostile force, not a daughter they seated next to folding chairs and mosquito candles. Then came Chase. So, is this what we're doing now? Performance art? You think you're better than the family just because you own a couple startups. His voice cracked at the end. Interesting. I hadn't heard Chase's voice crack since the day Dad caught him cheating on his AP exams and blamed the proctor instead. But the one that stopped me? Dad. Blair. I don't know what you're trying to prove. You could have just told me you were coming. We would have made space for you. The way you did it, it felt like a statement. I listened twice, then whispered aloud. It was. Because here's the truth. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. I was simply refusing to be erased. One more time. I made coffee. Black. No sugar. No almond milk. Just the way I learned to drink it during the early days of my company, when sugar was a luxury and milk was whatever came in free cartons at the co-working space fridge. And as I sipped, I opened my laptop. Not to read headlines. To send one email. Subject line. Legal notice. Patent infringement. To Chase Remington, CC, his media brand attorney who used to DM me in college. The message was short. Please see attached invoice and contract outlining use of patent hashtag 884-232 FX, owned by Remington Finance Technologies. Usage of this property in any commercial content is considered unauthorized. Payment due in full within 30 days, or formal legal action will proceed. I didn't write a note. Didn't call him first. Just sent it.
Plain. Clean.
Final. That's the thing about having receipts. You don't need revenge.
You just need a PDF.
Around noon, I got a call from my assistant. Hey, just a heads up, someone named Elise tried to call the office landline. Said it was urgent. I told her we don't patch non-investors through. I smiled. Perfect response. That afternoon, I did a Zoom call with a women in tech group from Berlin. The host, a founder named Anya, said, "Your story's been circulating in our circles. You're being called the helicopter CEO."
How do you feel about that?
I tilted my head, thought for a moment. I'm not here to land with drama. I'm here to remind people what it looks like when a woman arrives without permission. The chat blew up.
Hearts.
Applause emojis. One woman typed, "That sentence just healed 17 years of emotional labor." That night, I got a text from Mom again. Just one line. "They don't understand you because you weren't born to obey." No context, no follow-up. And somehow, it felt like the most honest thing anyone in my bloodline had ever said to me. 2 days later, Dad sent flowers. White orchids. Expensive. Sterile. With a note. "Proud of everything you've become. Let's talk soon." I placed them in the bathroom, between the towels and the plunger. That way, when I flushed, they'd still be in the room. But the most revealing moment? came during an investor dinner that weekend. One of the VCs, a woman in her late 50s with a Chanel clutch and eyes like a hawk, leaned in and whispered, "Is it true? You flew in and out of your father's party like an extraction mission." I laughed.
Who told you that?
She smiled. Everyone. It's genius. Quiet power always travels best when it's airborne. I didn't deny it, just raised my glass. Because in this world, perception is leverage. And I wasn't just perceived as powerful anymore. I was becoming a story. By Sunday, I'd heard from nearly everyone except one.
Chase.
Until 10:42 p.m. One final message. No greeting. No emojis. You've made your point. You win.
Congrats.
I stared at the screen, then typed. I wasn't playing. And hit send. The story didn't go viral because I wanted it to. It went viral because no one saw it coming. A woman they barely noticed, arriving by helicopter, leaving without a word, and owning every dollar of her silence. That's not scandal. That's a signal. By Monday morning I was trending. Not on Twitter. On LinkedIn. A blurry photo, me in all black, standing in front of the chopper, wind in my hair, had gone semi-viral. Captioned, "This woman left her father's party by helicopter after being seated outside. She's now one of the most powerful under 35 founders in fintech. Your move." 35K likes. 10K reposts. Comments flooded in. Icon behavior. If she wrote a masterclass, I'd enroll today. Proof that you don't have to scream to shift the power dynamic. I didn't post.
Didn't comment. Didn't need to.
Because when the story is yours, you don't chase attention. You edit the spotlight. That week, I got 3 podcast invites. 2 VC firms reached out just to connect. One offered a $2 million check without a pitch deck. I declined all of them, not out of arrogance, out of intention. I wasn't interested in being part of their story. I was finally writing mine. I spent the next few days restructuring my calendar. No more endless meetings. No more investor handholding. No more quick coffees with people who wanted proximity, not partnership. I focused on 3 things. My product, scaling quietly. My people, hiring those who'd been passed over too often. My peace, uninterrupted and under no one's control. I hired Ava, a former founder turned operator, to become my chief of staff. Her first question? What's our public voice? I thought for a moment, then answered. We don't clap back. We don't beg to be noticed. We speak when we're ready. And when we do, it's final. She nodded. Got it. Surgical elegance. I smiled. Exactly. Meanwhile, texts from family trickled in.
Dad.
Just saw your name in Fast Company. You've built something impressive.
Chase.
Your PR team's solid. You win the perception game. Elise. We never meant to make you feel like an outsider. You're part of this family. Funny how silence becomes a megaphone once it lands on the right frequency.
But I didn't reply.
Not out of spite. Out of clarity. Because this was never about being included again. It was about no longer needing to be. I hosted a private brunch for 8 women that Saturday. Founders. Operators. Creators. All of them had stories like mine. Overlooked.
Dismissed.
Underestimated. And now rising. We didn't trade war stories. We traded blueprints. And I opened with this. We don't need seats at their tables anymore. We build rooftops, land our own helicopters, and invite people who know how to pour without spilling. They laughed.
Cried.
Clinked glasses. That was the real celebration. Not Dad's birthday party.
This.
Legacy in the making. One of them, a woman named Jordan, said, "Do you think they regret how they treated you?" I shrugged. It doesn't matter. I'm not building for their redemption. I'm building so the next girl doesn't need permission. That week, I launched a private fund. Silent Altitude Capital. $15 million. Early stage. Women founded only. No announcements. No press release. Just action. We funded 2 startups by the end of the month. One was run by a 25-year-old who reminded me of myself, right down to the gap in her resume from family drama. She cried when we wired her $400,000. I just said, "Don't thank me. Just don't wait for a table that's already missing your name." Mom messaged again. "You always had it in you. I just wish I'd been strong enough to stay and teach you sooner." I sat with that one. And this time, I responded. "You didn't have to stay to teach me. You taught me by leaving. You were the first woman I ever saw walk away." The headlines began to fade. The viral tweets slowed down. But my momentum? Just beginning. Peace doesn't always look like silence. Sometimes it looks like control. Over your time, your money, your name, your narrative. It's been 3 months since the helicopter.
Since the patio seating.
The orchid apology. The press cycle. The whispers that turned into headlines and then back into whispers again. But I don't think about any of it now. Because I'm too busy building forward. My calendar is lean. 35 hours a week, max. 4 standing meetings. No Monday mornings. No Friday afternoons. I've said no to more things in the last 10 weeks than I used to say yes to in a year. Not because I'm trying to be exclusive. Because I'm finally free from proving. I live mostly between New York and Lisbon now. East Coast energy. European boundaries. I split my days between investor meetings and mentoring women who remind me of who I used to be. Not because I'm some savior, but because I remember what it feels like to sit outside a room you helped build. And I don't want another woman wasting years knocking on doors when she could just buy the building. One morning, I got a letter. Not a text. Not an email. A letter. Handwritten. From Dad. "Blair, I saw the Forbes spread. I read the interview. I won't pretend I always understood you. But I am proud of you.
You don't need me to say it.
But I need to say it anyway." I read it once. Then tucked it away. Not in a drawer. In a safe. Because some things deserve to be remembered, not because they were earned, but because they came too late to undo the damage. Elise sent a gift basket a week later.
Wine.
Chocolates. A note. "We may not always agree, but I respect what you've done." I gave the wine to Ava. Tossed the note. Because respect without repair is just a performance. And I'm no longer part of anyone's show. Chase never apologized. But I got a notification last month that his media startup had dissolved. Turns out he couldn't pay the infringement fine. My company now owns every asset from his failed brand, including the domain name.
I didn't post about it.
Didn't gloat. I just archived the files. Titled the folder. Lesson. Paid in full. On a Sunday morning, I hosted a brunch. My people only. No status invites. No photographers. No fragile egos. Someone brought up the helicopter story. "Did you plan that?" Like, actually plan it. I smiled. I plan my response, not their reaction. Another woman leaned in. What was the message? I thought for a moment, then answered. I didn't land to make a scene. I landed to make a point, that I no longer walk through doors built to keep me out quietly. I arrive in my own airspace, and I leave when I'm ready. A few weeks later, I got invited to a speaking engagement at a private girls' school. The theme? Power without permission. I wore black. Minimal makeup. No slides.
Just my story.
When I finished, one student, barely 16, asked, "How do you know when you're finally free?" I looked at her and said, "When you stop waiting for them to explain why they didn't choose you. Because you realize you were never supposed to be chosen. You were supposed to choose yourself." She nodded, and I saw it click. That night, I stood alone on my terrace. Sky clear. City quiet. I poured a glass of wine, took off my shoes, closed my eyes, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to defend anything. Not my ambition, not my boundaries, not my name, because I'd finally rewritten all of it. So no, I didn't sit inside that night at the party. And no, I didn't accept their crumbs. I didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't demand to be moved. I stood. And when the time came, I lifted off. And in that moment, I became unforgettable. Not because I was loud, but because I left them in the dust and took the sky with me